All right, Westworld Season 4. I can't believe we're already 4 seasons into the show. I guess it just keeps on going. Warning, I'm going to spoil everything in Westworld Season 4 and probably Seasons 1, 2, and 3 as well. And so if you don't want to be spoiled, and this is a show that has lots of twists and turns, I would highly recommend watching all those episodes and then coming back to this review. And this season, we are still out of the park like in Season 3. And this time, Dolores or Charlotte Hale or Dolores and Charlotte Hale's body, I don't know what to call this character, so I'm just going to call her Hale. She is hatching a new plot to take over the humans, which involves some flies and a big sound tower and some other just like machinations and plot things that happen throughout the season. And in the end, she succeeds, but only to, I guess, not be super satisfied by what happened, because then she ends up killing herself at the end. Because as one of the hosts in the show says, apparently none of the hosts want to live in this new world that she's created, and they're kind of killing themselves to get out of it. And so I guess she wasn't that happy with how things turned out. All right, so anyway, what did I like about this season of television? Well, I'll just start off by saying that this is probably one of the better seasons of television, at least when it comes to Westworld, that we've had in a long time. I thought Season 1 was amazing. I thought Season 2 was still pretty good, but kind of confusing and convoluted. Season 3, also pretty good, but just kind of a lot packed in there and not really sure that it really impacted me that much at the end of the day. And then it seems like in Season 4, they were just like, okay, let's go a little bit clean slate. A lot of people actually didn't like Season 3. And so all this stuff about like Rehoboam and like outliers and stuff, like some of that does show up in Season 4 as well. But it also seems like they kind of like forgot about a lot of the stuff that happened in Season 3 and are like, let's just start a little bit new with Season 4. And I have to say, I think that was a pretty good choice. Like, I thought that most of the season was really good, felt fresh. It felt just back to what I liked a lot about Westworld Season 1. And one of the reasons that I thought this season was good was that it was just a lot more straightforward overall than some of the other seasons. But managed to be straightforward, but still kind of kept some mystery and some twists in there to keep me interested. Now, one thing about how I watch shows like Westworld is that I usually watch the show and then I listen to a podcast or two where they're kind of theorizing. But also I have to say that for the last couple seasons of Westworld, I also basically needed to listen to them in order to even figure out what was happening in the plot, because there was just like so much happening, like different timelines, different characters, especially for seasons 2 and 3. It was confusing. And this is something that a lot of other critics that I listened to complained about. It didn't bother me so much, but it was still a nice breath of fresh air to be able to just follow Season 4 for the most part and not need to rely on someone else recapping it for me to figure out what was going on. Another thing I liked about this season was that it's just a little bit of an inversion from Season 1 in an interesting way. It's like the humans are the hosts and the hosts are the humans, and just a flip-flop from what was happening in Season 1. And we go so far as to revisit the whole theme of Season 1 with the revival of the Temperance Park, borrowing a lot of the same storylines from the park in Season 1. And I've watched other like movies and TV shows where they do a throwback to something earlier and it's not done very well. Like one of the complaints of Star Wars: The Force Awakens is that it is just a copycat of A New Hope. Now again, that didn't bother me so much about Force Awakens, but I could see what those people were saying. But I thought that Season 4 handled the inversion of things from Season 1 and the throwbacks to Season 1 in a relatively good way. Another thing that I continue to love about the show is just the visual design and how the show looks. Everything from the like lighting and color palette to the shot and frame design, just to kind of the production design for how they have envisioned this somewhat near-ish future worlds where there's aspects of things that are familiar to us today, but also aspects that have continued to progress. And even just choices like the costume design and like frankly even just what like the Dolores character is wearing throughout the season, I think is really smart. And then you get other specific visuals such as the sound tower, Hoover Dam, and then maybe kind of most apparent of all, the envisioning of a futuristic version of New York City. Again, borrowing some of what is currently there and then projecting to the future for some things that you might see in an alternative sci-fi reality. I thought that was all just really great. Now, as a side note, if you kind of watch all the way through in the last episode to the end credits and the kind of behind the scenes, they talk about how for New York City, Times Square, how they actually recreated that. And they use this thing called the volume, which is kind of like this big LED dome that they put around the set. And the basic thing is that it recreates the lighting in a realistic way so that when you're shooting your characters, it looks like they're actually lit by what it is that they should be. And so even if you replace the background with a CGI version, the lighting on the characters is more accurate. And so it all looks better than it would otherwise. It's actually a pretty big innovation in kind of the visual effects industry, and originally popularized by the show The Mandalorian. And what it frankly just helps with is getting more realistic lighting, more realistic CGI, and most importantly, within the limited budget that a TV show normally has. And so I just thought it was interesting to have this behind the scenes and that they're using this technology in the show. Okay, another thing I continue to love about this is the soundtrack. Ramin Djawadi, I never know if I'm saying his name right, but that's the composer. Ramin Djawadi does it again, and I still need to download the soundtrack for season 4 because I will be listening to it at work. And then finally, there were just a lot of specific moments and sci-fi elements that I really loved throughout this season of television. Just to call a few out, there's that scene earlier on in the season where the man in black is playing golf with the politician and he hits the perfect hole in one each time, just like that's what a host can do. Another is this idea that Bernard has been in the Sublime and like running all these simulations and can tell the future. I kind of see it as a throwback to Doctor Strange and the Avengers. He's like, I've seen all the possibilities and it's this one that might work. And then you get these cool moments, like I think at the beginning of the second to last episode of the season, Bernard and Maeve are walking into Hoover Dam and they do the simulation version of it first, and then they play back the real version, which is like mostly the same but slightly different. Really cool idea. You have things like the Caleb clones. I think this was like one of the last episodes where they still haven't correct fidelity in this timeline. And so you have the repetitions of Caleb, like getting farther and farther each version. And Aaron Paul's acting, I think, in this episode in particular is amazing. You have the fact that Charlotte Hale can just, whenever she wants to summon a bunch of people to come and form a chair for her, which is pretty funny. And then I think I mostly liked the idea of the storyteller character or the Dolores character in this season. The fact that she is writing these stories for everyone around her, but then she's in this some kind of simulation under the map in the building. I don't know, it's not really clear how it works and where she is, but I think it's fine. This is one of the things that it's like you don't want to interrogate the details too closely. But I kind of like the idea that she's recreating all of these characters around her, such as Teddy. Now, I listened to a couple of reviews, and I think there were a lot of criticisms of the fact that like all these people around her were ones that she created. I kind of liked it. It reminded me of this idea from some of the personal development stuff around manifesting things into your life and being your own best friend or your own like cheerleader, positive thinking and affirmations. It just evoked this thought that she was lonely and she was able to compensate for that by herself by creating this reality around her. But except in this version, it's on steroids because it's a host. I think she's a host. I don't actually know what she is, but she's some kind of AI who can really visualize this around her instead of just like normal humans where it's more looser. And then I know this was cheesy, but there's this moment at the end where you have Dolores, the storyteller, and her made-up best friend, and her made-up best friend is talking about how there are lots of terrible things in this world, but that she chooses to see the beauty. That was one of my favorite just concepts from the original season, and I know that it's like a cheap throwback, and that many people didn't like that it came up again here, but it actually touched me when I saw it. Okay, so what did I not like about this season? I heard from a lot of people, and there was like a lot of hate on the last episode in particular, where people thought it just didn't wrap up that well. I actually thought it was pretty good, but there were some elements, especially in the last episode, that I thought not quite there. One was Hale's transformation. I don't know, she was dead set on creating this like whole new world, and then at the end, she's like, oh, actually, let's give the storyteller another chance and let's let her run whatever she's running in the Sublime. And then she's like, I'm going to kill myself at the end. I'm not really sure that there was enough there to make me think that she would go through this whole transformation realistically. I don't quite understand her motivation. Maybe it's something that she's bored. She's been doing this for years. She realizes that her dream host paradise hasn't worked out and let's throw it all to hell. Maybe it's that, but didn't quite buy that transformation. I think there's a lot of loose ends and things that aren't really explained through the season, like this idea of transcendence. The hosts were supposed to be about to transcend, and I'm not sure what that meant still. Like, it doesn't seem like they're going to the Sublime. I'm not really sure what that was, and it was just kind of a drop thread. And then finally, at the end of the episode, I'm not really sure exactly what the storyteller, the Dolores character, is planning to do. Like, I think the implication is that she is going to now rerun another version of the entire Westworld story up to now, but in the Sublime, as a simulation starting from basically episode 1 of season 1. Like, the implication is that all of humanity is dead. I know that we see a couple characters, a couple outliers who have survived, but the idea is that like all of the hosts and all of the humans are, I guess, dead in the rest of the world. And so this is like the only way that some version of intelligent life is going to live on. But if this simulation is successful, and what does even success mean? Like, is she searching for a version of the world where humans and hosts don't destroy each other? And if that's what she's looking for, even if that happens, like, what is the end goal here? I guess it's still a pretty intriguing idea, and I do like the idea of a story within a story, and so that idea was cool, and maybe they're going to explain it next season if there is one. But yeah, just wasn't entirely clear what was going on at the end there. All right, so what did I think overall? So in the end, I have to say, I still think that this was a pretty good season of television. Thought-provoking, really cool sci-fi ideas, entertaining. Even if I still don't really know what's going on in all the parts or what was going on at the end, I would still personally recommend. And so I'll give this season of television 4 out of 5 stars. Now, what's a little bit unclear, at least at the moment that I'm filming this, is whether there's actually going to be a season 5. I think the original vision was that this show was supposed to be 5 seasons, but apparently it's not confirmed. And I do think that this last episode of this last season was filmed in a way such that if there wasn't a season 5, I think that this episode could have probably served as a season finale with this idea of kind of looping back to the beginning. But I hope that we get a season 5, and if we do, I will definitely be watching. Okay, so that'll do it for this video. If you liked it, hit the like button, which will help others find it, and subscribe for more. Peace.